ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wherever you are in the world, we're thrilled to be able to share this wonderful panel of experts with you. And this is the next session in our Ask an EMBA webinar series. We've been so fortunate to engage our students and alumni over the last year or so to discuss topics like the first year experience. And with our alumni, we have a great women's panel. And as you might know, one of the most unique features of our program is the opportunity to dive deeper into an area at the nexus of business and society, in an area where we believe we are most expert across Yale University. For us, those are asset management, healthcare, and today's topic, sustainability. In today's webinar panel, you'll be introduced to student and alumni panelists who are going to offer their take on their experiences as students and some graduates of the Yale MBA for Executives program within the sustainability area of focus. In the words of our faculty director, Professor Todd Port, sustainability represents some of the most challenging risks facing businesses today, as well as some of the most exciting opportunities. From climate change to income inequality, the success of business in the future will depend on how companies address these challenges and align themselves with the needs of society and the environment. So over a quick 45 minutes, you will hopefully learn more about the sustainability focus area, the impact of the program on our students and alumni personally, professionally, and more about the community at Yale SOM. If we have some time at the end of the session, we will open it up to your questions. You can feel free to use the Q&A feature at any time if you have any questions, and we'll answer those at the end of our time together if we're able to, or Liz, who is my colleague working on the back end of our Zoom today, can help as well. So I'm thrilled to welcome this panel of current students and alumni, and I'm going to pass it over to Bree Safarian, an alumna from the class of 2021, to first introduce herself, followed by introductions from the rest of the panelists. And Bree, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thanks so much, Joanne. Hi, I'm Bree Safarian. As she said, I graduated last year in our May class of 2021. I am a designer at the moment. I am a fashion designer for JCPenney, and you'll find out as we discuss a little bit more, I actually just accepted a position in sustainability at Macy's, so I will be moving soon, and this degree was a large part of that. So I live in New Jersey, outside of New York for obvious reasons with fashion, and I'm a mother of 3 small kids, one of which I had right before starting the program, so that'll be a theme here as well. And then I will pass it over to Jide.
Hello, everybody. Jide Okandaji here, class of 2023, focus area sustainability. I am based in the greater Boston area, where I am the Director of Strategic Marketing at Sensata Technologies, where I lead our organic and inorganic growth strategy for our clean energy solutions business. And I'll pass it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Jide. So my name is Ryan Berry. I'm from the class of 2020. I was also in the sustainability concentration. Currently, I work for what was Facebook, is now Meta. I'm in their energy and infrastructure division, where my team and we help our data centers negotiate power agreements and help meet our 100% renewable energy goals. I'll just throw in our standard disclaimer that anything I say is representative of my beliefs, not necessarily of my employer. But about me a little further, I live in Connecticut with my family. And I guess something that you may not know about me by looking on LinkedIn is that we recently had a son back in the fall. So I've been on parental leave for the past few months, which has been a really nice kind of, interlude in my career to kind of unplug for a while, not be dialed into LinkedIn or other things. So that's certainly been a nice experience, which is wrapping up. But that's about me. I think next we're going to, is it Sammy?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So hi, everybody. Pleasure to be with you. Sammy Ghazi. I work at PepsiCo, where I lead our strategic partnerships in sustainability. And for us, that means areas related to packaging, agriculture, climate, and water stewardship. I'm class of 2021. I was Bree's classmate, and 2 small children, one of which, again, my fun fact is that one of my younger daughter was born in April 2020, right when we had to go to virtual classes because of the pandemic. So, but it's that's a little bit about me. I'll pass it over, I think, to Steph.
Thank you. And so thank you so much for having me on today. So my name is Steph Priya and I'm part of a class of 2022. I'm also focused on sustainability. I'm currently based out of New York and I'm a dedicated ESG consultant in the financial sector. And just like Ryan, just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. My beliefs are my own and not my employer's. So just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you today.
So we're going to start at the very beginning, and this is one that all of us will answer because it's sort of what we're here to talk about today. What was our experience considering and applying to programs, and how we sort of came to that decision to get our MBA at Yale SOM? What made us apply to the EMBA overall as part of accelerating careers, and then also how did the sustainability area of focus factor into your interest in Yale SOM? So I'll start, I'm quick. I actually was not looking for an MBA. I was looking for a sustainability program. So I started off looking at fashion-based ones. They seemed really fluffy, and that was just not what I was interested in. And I have an ironic story. My mother actually served on a jury for murder in Connecticut, and someone who sat on the jury with her worked at Yale SOM. And so she actually just saw it in the email signature when they were chatting afterwards. And she was like, I think you really need to look at this program. And I was up until 4 o'clock in the morning reading everything I could find on the site. It was just perfect. It's the only place I applied. If I hadn't gotten in, I just wouldn't have gone to grad school. So mine, sustainability was all that it was about, and also just making sure that it was the kind of program that I felt I could really affect true change with. And an MBA seemed to be the perfect way to do that. And I have no regrets. So I'll pass it to Jide next. We'll just go around same order.
Oh, Brie, I'm not sure if I can, tough one to follow, but I actually, I came in primarily for the MBA. So I was looking at MBA programs. I always thought I was going to get an MBA, and Yale's program just seemed perfect for several reasons. So for me, what really attracted me to Yale was, in addition to sustainability, the integrated curriculum. So that to me was what sold me. And then digging further into trying to look at some of the trends going on, and definitely sustainability was that big opportunity to be able to change how you work, have more impact in the workplace and broadly in the environment. And so the more I learned about Yale's program and the sustainability focus area and the structure of it, the quality of the classes, the quality of the instructors, that really sold it for me. And it's been a lot of fun so far.
From my perspective, thanks, Jide. You know, I was a history major in college and never really considered myself interested in business. I did policy for most of my 20s in the energy industry, and then eventually took a job doing kind of more advisory and consulting work for utilities. So that gave me some exposure to the commercial side of things, and I had a pretty good knowledge or expertise in power markets and energy systems, and more that was trending towards having to be fluent in sustainability topics. So for me, why an MBA? I really wanted to take a lot of my expertise and deploy it in kind of a more commercial sense. How do you build products? How do you build a business? How do you evaluate businesses and things like that? So that's why I was looking to get an MBA. In terms of why Yale, for me it was the sustainability program and that concentration where you could take, I forget how many sustainability classes we took, could have been 8, 9, 10, or 12. There was no other program where you could get anywhere close to that. Maybe you could do an elective somewhere, through a full-time offering or something like that. But to be able to spend so much of my time in an interest in a topic where I was already very interested in personally and professionally was what got me to really consider Yale. So that was why I ended up here.
For me, when I applied, I had just started, or it had been a couple years when I'd been in our sustainability office at PepsiCo, but my background was mostly communications. And so I didn't have that, MBA type knowledge. It was more, it was more functional expertise that I had. And so, I was sort of in the midst of a career transition there, knowing that, I wanted to transition away from communications and into sustainability. And my first role was a little more sustainability communications oriented, but I knew that if I wanted to progress in sustainability, my pathway to doing that was to get more fluent in business and all the disciplines associated with it, and marry that with the sustainability issues that I was learning about. And so Yale provided that combination that I think everybody else is saying really nobody else had in that same way, where you're getting a top-notch core MBA, but also the depth in which the sustainability classes went, melding together sustainability and different frameworks that are looked at to strategically look at the issues, finance, operations, et cetera. Those are all things that I've taken with me into my roles going forward, and have helped make me a better and more effective partner internally as part of my job.
Thank you, Sammy. Happy to go next. So I think that for me, my decision was pretty straightforward. Following my graduation from my undergrad program, I always knew that I wanted to get an MBA, but I always, as I was looking for options, I wanted to hold off until I found one that also had some kind of purpose and that would align with my values to some extent. For me, my professional background, I've had almost 9 years worth of experience in sustainability. So it was great when I looked at Yale's MBA program or Emma program. I also realized that they had a very hardcore focus on sustainability, which is hard these days because it's somewhat of a newer space, but at the same time, to Ryan's point, it's hard to find, good content in terms of how sustainability revolves around business, and that's something that I had not been able to come across. So when I looked at Yale's MBA program, I realized that this would be a good fit for me. And I also, so as I read more, I realized that Yale SOM's mission also mentions a big focus on impact on society. And that's just, that's really what did it for me. It was the holistic view of business and impact on society in the context of sustainability. And that's really all I ever wanted. So then after that, I visited the campus for Experience Day, and that was really what did it for me. That was the decision. What drove my decision at that point. And when I got to school, I realized that I was home. I felt home. I felt like the people around me resonated with my values, with who I wanted to hang out with, and it was just an unbelievable day for me. And based on that, I really didn't even apply to any other programs. It was just the decision was made for me. It was pretty straightforward for me. So.
Definitely echo that. Yes, I just felt like I was at home. Every person I talked to, I was like, this person could be my next best friend. Everybody, like everyone here is just amazing. So sustainability is obviously gaining in popularity as clients, investors, and individuals all seek to make a positive difference. It's partly why the MBA program identified it as an area of focus in the expansion in 2014. So how do you define it, and what does it mean for you as a potential MBA student? But then how did that shift or change? Steph, you want to take this one first?
Yeah. So I think that, based on what I see every single day, sustainability has multiple definitions. It's a huge umbrella and the scope is really endless. As we're thinking about diversity and inclusion and, climate risk and anything and everything that falls in between can be considered sustainable, sustainability focused. So I personally define this as a need to run a businesses in a responsible way in which we account for environmental and social capital as well as its implications. And this is, of course, in addition to financial capital for businesses. So I think that if we operate more sustainably, more future generations will continue to thrive. And as part of this program, I would say that this definition was reinforced by professors. And I actually got to learn that the business approach to make a better case for sustainability, which is something that, at times it feels like it runs in parallel from business practices. And I think this program has allowed for me to see how these are all intertwined and how it doesn't have to be either or, right? We can all operate sustainably in a more sustainable way, I would say.
Sammy?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think about sustainability as how do we operate in a world of increasing constraints? And that's for me is the tie to business. How do you, in a world where there are water shortages and climate is a bigger issue, and so on and so forth, the resources that we're working with, in a expanding world from a population standpoint, how do we do that in a way that again maintains your business in the short term and for future generations, because that's what any business strives to do. And so there is um, real business case for why sustainability needs to be part of the overall company strategy. And I would argue that sort of in concert with policy and governments, businesses are the biggest determinants of whether our world transforms in that way. And so knowing how to achieve those goals and operate within those constraints is going to be a critical part to business success going forward. And so that tie to me is very clear, and is going to be even the urgency is going to go up in the years to come.
Ryan?
So I'll meet there. So it's an interesting question, and it's one that when I was in the program, your professors asked you this, your classmates asked you this, your family and peers would ask you, well, what is sustainability? So it's one you'll think about a lot while you're there. And very generally, the way I look at it, and Sammy kind of hit upon this as well, is like it's a lens through which you're considering the opportunities and risks to your business or your project or whatever you're doing on a long-term and short-term basis is kind of the general umbrella I would think about sustainability. And that was kind of how I'd answer that question when I was in the program, and it is kind of been consistent throughout. I mean, I guess one area where it's kind of changed as I went through the program is that when you'll learn things in the core that are very concrete and very kind of traditional business disciplines and frameworks. Like if you're doing company valuations or you're doing discounted cash flows or multiples, things that are just very concrete frameworks. And I was always waiting to kind of get to that in sustainability. And by the time I kind of got to the program, what I realized was that may not always exist when you're in sustainability. It's, as Steph said, it's a very kind of newish field. And so I think for me, when I think about sustainability, it's really learning to embrace the ambiguity, because it'll never go away. And then always ask yourself, what is material for this approach that you have? And getting comfortable wrestling with that ambiguity is always part of the process when you're in any type of sustainability field. And so for me, that was kind of my big takeaway when I left, is like, this is a kind of, there's uncertainty that will always be in this field. And your job is to kind of define it and put frameworks around it to the best of your abilities. And I think that's where the core kind of helps you get comfortable with those things. But that was kind of upon leaving the way I would look at it and assess it. So
part of the intention of the area of focus structure is to allow students to learn from faculty and peers in a way that allows them to bring value to their work and companies. What are some of those lessons or insights? How do you bring sustainability and what you've learned or are currently learning in this program into your day-to-day professionally? And I would say also, someone put into the chat, how does the interaction with the people from the other tracks, asset management and healthcare, how does that impact as well? So if anyone has something to add on that note, if you'd like to add that as well. Jide, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I have a lot to say, I think, in that regards, right? So where do I even start and how do I keep it concise? So the first year, right, my experience with the sustainability portion of the curriculum has been mostly with my peers, but also the colloquium series. And now in the spring semester, I'm taking an elective renewable energy project finance. So starting with that class, to me, that is so applicable to what I do. So as I mentioned, I'm the director of clean energy solutions, and to be taking a class in renewable energy where I get to learn more about the industry, but also about the financial aspects of some of my customers, to me has been awesome, right? Because I apply that every day. It helps me to understand the ecosystem in which I play much better. other interesting things have been like the colloquium series, right? And we've had some phenomenal speakers. So I remember once listening to Vincent from Patagonia, the chief philosophy officer, and he was talking about how it's a false dichotomy to think about there being a trade-off between impact and cost, right? So the purpose of business should be aligned to serve people and the environment. So stop thinking of it as a cost, or even listening to the former vice chair of PepsiCo, where he talked about think of sustainability not as a cost, but as an imperative to survive long term for your business, because we're all operating in environments where they're constrained. So we have to think of this as innovation that is required for long-term survival. And then just interacting with the peers, right? I have peers who are very knowledgeable about the industry, and this informs how I go about my day on Monday morning when I've learned from my peers over the weekend, and it helps me how I look at the strategy that I continue to build and implement at the workplace. And I think there was a follow-on question you had asked, Bree, that I don't recall at this moment.
Just from the Q&A, if you have any thoughts on interacting with people from asset management and healthcare as well.
Oh, absolutely. So as a first year, everybody's taking the same core classes. So there's a lot of interaction there. So even though the way I look at it is, even though we do have the different tracks, in the first year you're all together. In my learning team of 6 people, we all have people from asset management, we have people from sustainability, but also healthcare. So there's a lot of interactions there. And I've certainly formed like study sessions with people from different tracks. So there's a lot of interaction.
Steph, would you like to take that one next?
Yeah. So I would say that I personally got so much from my sustainability focused classes, and particularly the conversations, the focus discussions. One of the examples that I like to give is the class that we took with Professor Doug Kaiser. He taught climate change law, and in my field, I get to see how this problem affects investors. But Professor Doug, he just took it a step further, and he enable discussion, and he accounted for all the legal framework in which climate change regulation can be enforced globally, right? So to me, this was really useful because it gave me, given the nature of my job, it gave me great insight in terms of how this affects investors globally, right? So this is a massive problem that we're all trying to figure out. Nothing's set in stone. Corporations, governments, regulations, or regulation agencies, they're all trying to figure it out. So when you bring this conversation to the table, we realize, okay, how much of this can it actually be enforced, right? So I think that widened my horizons in ways I did not anticipate. So it was very rewarding. And to the second question, in terms of interacting with other classmates from different tracks, I think because I work with investors, I more or less get a sense in terms of how some people in the asset management track might perceive sustainability in their day-to-day. So I think we've had very candid conversations over drinks and over dinner, and it's just incredibly rewarding to see the other side. And just to wrap up, on the healthcare side, I once had one of my peers come to me and say, "Hey, Steph, we're looking at, you know, finding ways to bring in, more resources for a specific hospital, for specific practices they were looking into." And she said to me, "Hey, is there a way to, you know, ring fence this in a sustainability context? Like, is there a way to bring this to that conversation?" And as we talked about the risks and opportunities that would circumvent the healthcare industry, we went at length in terms of how both our fields overlap in so many ways. And I think it was just one of those things that I had never anticipated having so much in common with in terms of the challenges that they're facing. So that was also very rewarding.
I'll just finish up on this. Yeah, you have a lot of interaction with people from the other tracks, and it's very fruitful. But I would also say within the sustainability track, there is a lot of diversity of background and diversity of thought as well. Because I mean, in our class, I know we had a number of people who were in like aerospace engineering, but then we had Sammy at PepsiCo. We had an architect. I was a designer. So you get these like really broad discussions that really enrich your experience of every single class that you're in, for sure. But the other thing I'd like to call out is just in retrospect, the moment that was sort of the most transformative for me personally actually was not a part of the official program at all. It was some random Zoom webinar that I signed up for through CBAE. And so just also be aware of the fact that the broader Yale community, especially for the sustainability track, the CBAE and School of the Environment connection, just sign up for absolutely everything you possibly can, because there will still be things that you miss, because there's just such richness available to you. You know, at the end of my class, end of my experience, I also took a class at the Jackson Institute that was hugely transformative for me as well, and had absolutely nothing to do with business, but definitely with society. And it also informed my sustainability experience as well. So just open it up to the entire Yale University as well, for sure.
Yeah.
So now a few of us have been out of the EMBA program for a year or two and are continuing to experience the impact it's had both generally, and we just to reflect on what we learned as students and as students specifically of sustainability. So we just wanted to talk about what the impact has been on each of us, program in general, and then sustainability in particular. So I'll start with that one, because obviously I had a really big shift recently with getting a new position and shifting my career completely right now. And just to call out that when I was being interviewed by the chief supply chain officer, he kept mentioning that my resume was really impressive. And I said, so what was it about my resume that was so impressive? And I was thinking I could come back to career services at Yale and tell them, because they helped me overhaul my resume. And he said, well, Yale, of course. You know, he said, we're really interested in sustainability, but we're also a retailer. We have to stay in business. We have to make money. So we are looking for someone, I wrote it down so that I could tell you exactly. So we need someone to help us with the financial metrics to tie it all together. And that just, it made the whole thing make sense to me, because that was exactly what I was looking for when I applied. That's exactly what I gained from the program when I was in it. And then it actually resulted in getting a new position for me. So I'd say it checks all the boxes for me there. So Steph, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think for me is this whole experience has been incredibly rewarding in the sense that I was very focused on a specific sector, right? I work in finance and sustainability in finance specifically, and that's all I knew, right? So this program opened up any notions, any preconceived notions of what I thought sustainability was. And it allowed for me to see, to your point earlier, Bree, in terms of, you know, how other people in different businesses, different sectors are thinking about things, and how we bring it back to the business and to the bottom line. And again, you know, repeating myself, it doesn't have to be either or. It's more of a, how do you think about this holistically so you can account for all the risks and opportunities in this in the context of sustainability, and then thrive in your business. Then I would say that that's one of the things that, you know, really has shaped me in so many ways, because I can speak to other things and I can broaden my horizons and have a different type of conversation that goes more into depth in terms of strategy, well beyond finance. So that's one of the things. And then the other one is, and I'm sure you're all going to hear it a lot, but it really is a network. Jide mentioned the colloquium speakers. There are times that, you know, some of my classmates and I would reach out to these speakers who are impressive, right? So the fact that we get to speak to them one-on-one, and the fact that we could ask them out for dinner, or, you know, even with our professors, right? Dinner, drinks, or what have you, to grow that experience and grow that network effect. I always, you know, I would sit across from someone incredibly huge with an impressive resume and just thinking, oh, hey, like, how do I even get to sit here with this person? And that goes the same for all my classmates, right? So as you look to your left or to your right, sitting in a classroom, you realize that you really are amongst the best. And I think that never ceases to surprise me. So I think it's really the networking effect that has been more than rewarding, more than anything anyone could have said to me. I think this was well beyond that. So that's, I'll leave it at that.
Jide, did you have anything you want to add?
Ray, did you?
Yeah, sorry, Jide, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I didn't quite hear you. Yeah, no, I think there's not much I can add to what Steph said. I think all of that is great. to me, I mean, I recently made a transition too, similar to you making a transition. Like 5 weeks ago is when I started as in the clean energy, leading the strategy for clean energy solutions business. So all of that is bringing all of the impact that I've had, that Yale has had in the short 6 months that I've been there, right? Not only from the sustainability part, but also the integrated curriculum, and being able to apply that and segue into this new role has been really rewarding.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk to some alum a little bit more about who makes up or made up your community at SOM. Who were the classmates in your area of focus, and how did those relationships impact your experience? We spoke about it a little bit before, but you can go a little bit deeper. And then how did you connect with students outside your area of focus? Particularly, I'm going to throw this to Ryan because I think he had the most in-class, on-campus experience of most of us, about what was it like to be there long-term with all of your classmates, and favorite memories you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think of the 3 classes here. My class was in person probably the most, but that was a really special part of the program. I mean, you know, I was a little lucky that I lived pretty close by, so it was easy for me to get to New Haven, but you know, I had folks in my class who travel from Texas, DC, all up and down, all over the country, even from Canada, every weekend, and being in person every other weekend for 2 to, or maybe 2.5, 3 days, really made the experience special. And so, off the top of my head, I think about generally the class activities we do together. There was the Harvard Yale football game. We went to Fenway Park, which was really special. Hockey games. Tours of the campus, those are all kind of memories I have of spending time with my classmates. What was really kind of what I liked the best about it was just going to dinner every Friday night or whatever it is. And I think most people kind of fall within a certain place in their life, whether how old they are, where they are in their career, where they are with their family. And it's very rare to get the opportunity to be as social as you do, with folks, going to dinner every other Friday night. So for me, that was really special. That's where you got to really know, up to 70 other people, pretty well and connect with them, which is an opportunity you don't necessarily have at a certain stage of life. So that for me was how I built a lot of connections with my classmates. And I'd also say kind of more broadly with the Yale community, when I was in the program, I was always reaching out to people who had gone to SOM and were in some type of, clean energy or sustainability industry and kind of seeking mentorship and exploring kind of what they did, how they got to where they were. And so that was really helpful for me. And now that I've been out of the program for a while, I've kind of enjoyed, when other folks reach out to me who are in the program or maybe at the school, the environment, talking to them about, what they're looking to do. And that's kind of kept me in the community, and something I've really enjoyed kind of, paying forward to other folks who are kind of coming up through the program. That's the special part about being there, is that you have to put a lot into it, but you get a lot out of it. Especially as you're getting to learn your classmates and other people who've gone to Yale or gone to SOM. So that was really special to me.
Sammy, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the good thing about how the program is structured is that you have a lot of opportunities to mix with different kinds of people and just connect with as much of the class as possible. And so, your first year, which is really focused on the core MBA classes, you have a learning team of 6 people or so that you're connected with, and you do essentially all your projects and work with, and you get to know them really well. And that's a mix of the different focus areas of sustainability, healthcare, asset management. And so you get to, one of my learning teammates, ran a community health center in Los Angeles, and, it was fascinating listening to her talk about, some of the challenges she was dealing with at the beginning of the pandemic, for example. And then, when you get into your sustainability focus areas, it switches up again. You get a new, mini learning team. And, it felt like, the team I was on, we became very close, as we worked on projects together in those areas, and then, just the general socialization that you have with each other, you just become friends in natural ways. I mean, just give you like one fun example. So like me and two other classmates have our own little like WhatsApp, chat on NBA, so it's like during the NBA finals, we were just like chatting to each other about like basketball, and it's like those little things, it's nice to have that element of with it in addition to the professional enrichment that you're having by interacting with folks who are really, diverse in terms of their experience areas.
Yeah, sorry for hovering the mic again. But I definitely want to weigh in on this because I want to resonate. I want to resonate everything you just said. And for the people out there, they tell you all these things they're going about this process, but actually going through it. Like I know that I have 6 class weekends left, and that just means that, like Ryan said, not being able to hang out with your friends every other class weekend or what have you, it's heartbreaking. And just because at least for us, we're a rare class in the sense that we were remote for a couple of class weekends due to COVID. We all, at least in New York, we all got together. We all figured out how we could, divide and conquer different subgroups to hang out and do, take class together. Because that was even another opportunity that we did not want to miss out on, hanging out and just, taking class. We would project it on the TV. We would just be like talking about it and just, literally still having that good time. While we were not in person, unfortunately, we were still keen on hanging out with each other and not missing out on this opportunity to hang out. So it's a journey, and you'll find people that you connect with, and life or class without them will not be the same. So I can assure you, it does sound too good to be true, but it really is. So just wanted to put that out there because it's heartbreaking for me.
So as we're getting a little closer to the end of time, we just wanted to make sure we all had a chance to share what do you wish that you had known before you were applying or as you were applying? Any tips or tricks? I know I wanted to share the thing I was terrified about. So obviously I shared at the beginning, I knew I wanted to come. This was the only place I had applied. Long after I had already applied, been accepted. No, sorry, I had to be in the middle of the acceptance. I had to ask my boss for permission and his authorization to do it. And I was terrified. I put it off for months because I was terrified, and I just didn't know how to approach it. And then somebody had recommended that you could potentially level up, talk to your boss's boss, because frequently the higher in the organization somebody is, the more they appreciate the idea that they have someone on their team who wants to go back to grad school for something. And that they might view it as less of a threat and more of a positive for their team, that this is someone who's super engaged. And I was terrified by that too, because I didn't know him very well, the person 2 levels up. But then my direct boss quit. And so I had to talk to him. And he didn't even let me get the second sentence out of my mouth before he said, "Of course." And he was like, that was it. I had like a PowerPoint prepared. I was so ready for this to be such an intense conversation, and it lasted all of 5 minutes. So I would just say, don't let that terrify you as much as it terrified me. And just know that since it's something that you want to do, it's most likely that they will view this as someone who is super engaged, and probably worth investing in, whether it's just the time or the money or what have you. Just don't let it paralyze you the way it paralyzed me for a while. Jide, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, my advice is a little more fundamental. So, as someone who was interested in an MBA but sat on the sidelines for a while trying to find the perfect time, or making all those mental calculations of when will be the ideal time to go, my advice really is there's never going to be a perfect time. There's always going to be something going on in your life, and just go ahead and apply. Right. So to me, based on the 6 months or so of experience, it's been such a fantastic and transformational experience that I would say you want to do it as soon as possible. So just go ahead and apply. And when you get to Yale, be involved. right? There's a lot of opportunities to get involved in the community. Like Sammy mentioned, going to the Harvard Yale game, we actually did that last fall, and that was a lot of fun, right? So there's different opportunities to get involved. The program team does a fantastic job putting different programs together. So get involved as much as possible. It's a lot of fun.
Ryan, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, similar to what G-Day said, I think it applies when you're applying, and then once you're in the program, get as involved as possible. So when you're in the application process, go to events. Like I would go to SOM events that the admissions team had told me about in New York City or in Connecticut or on campus. I think it, shows that you're interested in the program and taking it seriously. And then, once you're in the program, take advantage of everything you can. G-Day said he's in the Renewable Energy Project Finance course. I took that course when I was in my last year. It was like the 6th course I was taking on top of the other 5 I was taking at school and through SOM. And it was Monday afternoons from 2 to 5. And it was just like, at the time, I thought to myself, this is like too much work. But it was my favorite course. I think one of my favorite courses that I took. And so just get involved as much as possible. And I think that applies when you're looking at the program. And then also, obviously, once you're there, there's so much to take advantage of that will help you. So,
Sammy, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think one observation I had was from personal experience. The time that I was in the program, was a time of change for my family. We had, a young son, and our daughter was being born, and I think I anticipated that all those things were going to be the case going into the program. But you have to sort of make sure you're doing the work to, with your family, to make sure that everybody, is comfortable with the approach. And not to say that there won't be challenging moments balancing all that, but if you could sort of set some some guidelines for how you're going to work through these 2 years in a way that leaves you in a good place with your family, and in balance to the degree that you can balance it. It's really important to just think about that ahead of time, and sort of have a plan. You may need to adjust that plan, but it's really important to success going forward. For many people, they're doing this because it's the right thing for their family, right? It's the right thing for them professionally, personally, but it's the right thing in the big picture for their family. So you want to make sure they're part of that journey in a real way.
If you want to finish this up?
Yes. So 2 things. One is for the application process that I just thought about. I remember looking at the essay questions, and I had multiple versions of my essays, just thinking like, which one's the right one? Like, which one better aligns with what they want to hear? Which one will get me into Yale? And then I had someone give me this advice, and they said, this whole thing has been designed for you to be your true self. And if your values align with the school's mission, it'll be the right essay. So I ditched those 2 that I had, and I rewrote them, and I was true to myself. I tried to show my true colors and why, and try to expose realistically why I think I'm a good fit for this program. And I think that's true. This whole thing has been designed for you to screen yourself in terms of, I am the person for this program because this is me. And just that authenticity has allowed for me to see that the peers around me are the perfect peers for me, for my class. And that's just because I think we're all genuinely authentic, right? So it's not about what sounds better or what sounds best. I think that was the wrong approach for me initially. It's more about, what about yourself can you bring to the table for these conversations to get to be part of this group of people? So that's one. And then the other one is, as a student, I would just say, take every single day, one day at a time. Every single milestone will add up to your overall EMBA experience. So it's just breaking down into pieces, because at times, I think Ryan mentioned this, and some of you may have had kids or babies during the program. It can be a little bit overwhelming. You need to be organized. You need to get your act together in all of this. But at the end of the day, if you really take it one day at a time, you'll realize that you'll get further than you ever thought you would. So it's a great experience, and I think it was just the best thing that I did for myself.
Bree, you couldn't have done a better job moderating our panel today. We are right at 12:45. We did have one, I think, really great question in the chat about classmates. Do they have a job or a role in sustainability? Obviously, all of you do, but if you could quickly comment on that. I'll comment on it from the admissions perspective, which is that, you know, our hope, expectation for all folks in all areas of focus is that these are jobs that you have currently. You have to be employed while you're in the program. But yeah, we do expect that folks touch sustainability in one way or another as members of the area of focus. Does anybody have anything sort of different or would talk about that a little bit differently? From an admissions perspective, we are hoping to bring together a group of peers whose jobs do directly relate to sustainability, whether they're in charge of it or working on that. Does anybody else want to say anything else about that?
I would just say in our class, Sammy was the only one whose actual job title said anything about sustainability, though. You know, like the guy that was an architect, he owned his own architecture firm. So he wanted to pivot his design and business to be more about sustainability, but that doesn't mean that his job title said anything about sustainability. Same thing with me. My job title still says designer, but I'm pivoting. So there was a lot of that kind of pivot, or that you're just in an industry that is pivoting as well. We had people from oil and gas who obviously the entire industry has to pivot. And so they were interested in being a part of that change. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's your title.
Great job.
In my class, I would say the same thing. I mean, we had such a wide array of people with different skill sets. Now everyone was honed in on a different angle on sustainability, but we had someone in fashion, we had people in engineering, we had people who were in utilities like me, but you really could pick across a wide swath of people for a lot of expertise or things that I would never even consider from a sustainability perspective before. And that was very valuable to me.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Bree. We're a couple minutes over. I want to respect everybody's time, especially our panelists. So a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, thank you. It's such a pleasure to see you all. I'm looking forward to seeing Steph and Jide in person this weekend for class weekend, and our alums, I hope to see you for reunions coming up to celebrate your commencement, Ryan in particular, for class 2020. From an admissions perspective, please come to our additional Ask Anemba webinars. We've got another one next week with asset management students and alumni. We have an information session coming up this Saturday. Yours truly and my colleague David will be presenting with a broad overview of the program, and our final application deadline for the July 2022 cohort is in just over a month and a half or so. March 30th is the deadline. If you have any questions about that, contact us. If you haven't done a pre-assessment yet, please go ahead and do so. We'd be happy to offer you some feedback on your candidacy for the program and answer any questions that you have. Steph, Sammy, Ryan, Jide, Bree, and with special thanks to Bree for moderating. Thank you for your time. A pleasure to see you. Thanks to everybody who came today as well. And we look forward to staying in touch, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.